was Hashimpura, Meerut on 22nd May 1987. Here, India witnessed one of the most brutal incidents of custodial murders in recent history. The victims of the killings were only Muslims. And the executioners of this cold-blooded crime were the members of the PAC, a section of the Indian police force whose history is filled with instances of bias against the Muslim community. The summer night of that chilling horror remains embedded in independent India's history as one of its most horrifying open secrets.
मेरे बगल में गोली लग के आर पार हो गई थी उस टाइम।
हमारे लिए, हमारे बच्चों के लिए क़यामत का दिन था।
तीसरे ने मेरे गोली मारी, मेरे पेट में लगी, लगने के बाद में मैं गिर पड़ा। उसके बाद में एक ने कहा कि इसे नहर में फेंक दो।
So what happened in Hashimpura around 40 years ago?
बहुत बुरा मंजर था, बहुत बुरा खौफ था।
इस तरह के गुनाहों को अंजाम देने वाले ज्यादातर लोग बच जाते हैं।
It was Al-Wida Juma, the last Friday of Ramadan. In the curfew-struck settlement of Hashimpura, a Muslim-populated residential colony of factory workers, daily wagers and weavers, Muslims were returning back to their homes after offering Jummah, the afternoon prayers. This is when the paramilitary and the C Company of the 41st Battalion of the UP PAC, Uttar Pradesh Provincial Armed Constabulary, arrived, ordering all residents of the Muslim populated area to vacate their houses and stand outside for a search operation. Outside, the residents cowered while their houses were ransacked inside. The able-bodied men were segregated from the crowd. And hundreds of them were then whisked away in police trucks to the police station and tortured. Official records capped their numbers at 324. There were around 50 men left behind, including some minors, who were rounded up and packed into the rear of a PAC-owned police truck. Assuming they would be detained like the others, they waited with bated breath, hoping that the ordeal would end soon. The PAC truck drove them a little away from Hashimpura to a secluded area on the banks of the Upper Ganga Canal as the sun set over the horizon. The abducted men were forced to come out of the truck and shot at point-blank range. With the increasing chaos, PAC started firing indiscriminately inside the truck. The Gang Nahar started becoming the repository of those dead, but the headlights of an approaching milk van stopped the ordeal. Temporarily though. After ensuring the driver went the other way, the truck moved with the remaining Muslims to another stop, much closer to the capital city, carrying out the cold-blooded executions once again in the dark silence of the curfewed night and dumping the remaining dead bodies into the Hindon River. 42 of those on board that truck were killed. At the time, it was Congress's government in the state of Uttar Pradesh. When the survivors approached the Congress leader, Mohsina Kidwai, a member of parliament from Meerut and cabinet minister, for help, they received a stark refusal.
यूपी की हुकूमत ने हमारे साहब का साथ नहीं दिया
स्टेट गवर्नमेंट ने हमारे साथ ज्यादती की और उसमें उन्होंने भेदभाव बरता। कोशिश ये की कि कर्मचारी को बचा लें या रॉयल फैमिली के लोग जो उसमें इन्वॉल्व थे उनको बचा लें।
Congress's response to the massacre wasn't surprising. Many have claimed that this massacre was one of the deadly outcomes of the Rajiv Gandhi-led Congress government's decision to unlock the gates of Babri Masjid. The time was ripe with tension. Meerut was under curfew, having suffered a month of rioting. In the past also, Meerut, under Congress rule, had witnessed waves of communal violence. So even when the news of the Hashimpura massacre finally broke out in the public with the press conference of then Janata Dal leader Syed Shahabuddin, a prominent Muslim politician, the UP administration refuted the claim. They organized a counter press conference addressed by the DM and the SSP, asserting that the survivors' testimony was fabricated, and worse, claiming that nobody by his name ever lived in Hashimpura.
हमारे जो बच्चों को मारा गया है वो किसी हिंदू ने नहीं मारा, किसी सिख ने नहीं मारा, किसी और कौम के नहीं मारा। जो गवर्नमेंट के पुलिसकर्मी हैं, जो हमारी हेल्थ व्यवस्था गवर्नमेंट ने बनाई है पुलिस, उसी पुलिस ने हमारे बच्चों को मारा।
तो ये कौन सा इंसाफ है यहाँ का? जो हिफाजत करने वाले हैं वही मार के नहर में फेंक दिए।
On the one end, the government was in absolute denial, and on the other, several sections of the media were invested in creating a narrative that justified the killings.
जो हिंदी के दो लीडिंग अखबार थे जो मेरठ से छप रहे थे, दोनों ने रिपोर्टिंग एक तरफा की, दोनों की रिपोर्टिंग बायस थी। दोनों ऐसा लगता था जैसे वो कोई हिंदू माउथपीस हैं। दिल्ली बगल में था कि एक हफ्ते तक दिल्ली में किसी को पता ही नहीं चला। दिल्ली के बॉर्डर पर डेड बॉडीज़ बह के आई थी नहर से, नोएडा और मयूर विहार के बीच में, और दिल्ली में किसी अखबार में एक लाइन नहीं छपी।
PAC has often been in the limelight for its prejudiced behavior against Muslims, and its controversial history in general is not confidential. In the 29 riots reported since 1972 in the state of Uttar Pradesh, PAC has been accused of massacring Muslims in 13, including 1972 Firozabad, 1978 Sambhal and Aligarh, 1980 Moradabad and Aligarh, 1982 Meerut, 1983 Behrech and Mau, 1986 Meerut, Pilibhit, Barabanki and Allahabad, and 1987 Hashimpura and Malyana in Meerut. Created to control extraordinary situations of violence, UP PAC is one of the state-armed police forces. Allegedly, it was reorganized post-1947 to adjust the composition of the provincial force because it retained a significant number of Muslims after partition. Poor representation of Muslims in its ranks has been a serious charge. After the telling allegations of PAC's involvement in the Moradabad riots against Muslims, the then Chief Minister of UP, VP Singh, constituted Vishesh Seva Dal as part of the PAC for adequate representation of the minorities in the force. Its stark failure was its participation in the Hashimpura massacre itself. With the bogey of PAC's impunity, media's betrayal, and government's denial, the course of justice was next to impossible for the victims of the Hashimpura massacre. Yet, against all odds, 5 survived the night's horror. Their testimonies and the persistence of victims' families in pursuing justice, despite the lack of support from political parties, were one of the key reasons for the due process being followed in the case.
When they recounted those stories, they were always conscious of the fact that they would lose this. And yet they wanted to go and testify. And at one stage we asked them why. And they said, चलो सजा नहीं होती, हमारी बात तो सुनी जाएगी।
आपको उम्मीद है न्याय मिलेगा?
मालूम नहीं।
In 1988, the UP government ordered an inquiry into the case. In 1996, the charge sheet was filed. It was in 2006 when charges were framed in the trial court. In 2007, a response to 615 RTI applications revealed that all of the accused remained in service with complete impunity and were classified excellent in the annual confidential report of the department. And in 2015, the court acquitted all the accused.
Wounds of many survivors reopened after 28 years when a trial court acquitted all 16 provincial armed constabulary personnel accused in the Hashimpura massacre case. Several families are devastated once again, this time by the verdict.
सारी बेईमानी हुई है, दिल दुख रहा, घर में खाना तक नहीं पक के हमारे यहाँ 28 साल हो गए हमें पता, हमने अपनी बच्चियाँ कैसी पाली हैं, मेहनत मजदूरी करके भूखे प्यासे रख के हमने बच्चियों को पाला है और आज भी हमें इंसाफ नहीं मिला, 28 साल हो गए.
The victims' families and eyewitnesses who survived the incident challenged the verdict. On October 31st, 2018, the High Court overturned the trial court's verdict, stating that this was an incident of custodial killing. Of the total 19 accused, 3 had died and the rest were granted life imprisonment.
In 1987, targeted killing of more than 40 Muslim men by the members of the PAC, the Delhi High Court had overturned the acquittal of the trial court. Today, the High Court convicted the 16 surviving PAC personnel under Section 302 IPC for life imprisonment, holding that this was a case of targeted killing of the minority community.
Noting the fact that only the subordinate personnel were indicted, questions of impunity and accountability of the senior officials were left behind, and many echoed this concern. The final verdict of the court came at much cost to the survivors of Hashimpura. It was a victory that came 31 years later, too late to be called one. Hashimpura, in all its brutality and horror, became a rare case of judgment where custodial killing was belatedly acknowledged by the courts. But its rarity makes it more unfortunate. What's even more unfortunate is that in December last year, the Supreme Court granted bail to 10 of the convicts. What kind of victory allows the guilty to walk free?
From the very moment that the investigation was initiated, there was a deliberate plan to either not collect the crucial pieces of evidence, allow them to be lost through passage of time or otherwise, or to conceal certain evidence, or to destroy and tamper with evidence.
Hashimpura, in the long list of massacres, never managed to shake the conscience enough for systematic acknowledgement of the horrors committed against Indian Muslims. The question remains, what will?